Launch Squid Validator. In the opened window, you can choose between selection and project modes. Let's choose selection mode first. In this mode, you can select all the necessary checks from the list and validate selected objects from your scene. You can select check by clicking on the checkbox next to the check name. If you hover over a check, a detailed description of the check will appear in a pop-up window. Some checks allow you to set specific attributes. To see the available attributes, click on the icon with the letter A next to the check. You can put any check into as info mode. In this case, after validation, the check will be in info status instead of error. To do this, click on as info when hovering over the check. Now let's create our first preset of checks. Select all the checks you need and customize their attributes. To create a new preset, enter a preset name in the Presets field and click Create. To change or overwrite a preset, make changes to the list of selected checks. Hover over the preset you want to change and click Save. To load a preset, hover over the preset you want and click Load. To run validation, select the objects you want to validate and click the Validate button. You will see the result of all selected checks in the Validator window. You can display the list of checks in the error or info statuses. For some checks, you can see detailed error information by hovering over the check message. In addition, some checks can be corrected by clicking the Fix It button in the check field. Some checks may indicate invalid items, which can be selected by pressing the Select button. Let's correct all the errors we receive after validation. Now everything is correct. Let's switch to the project mode. In this mode, we can set naming rules and asset hierarchy, as well as apply different sets of checks to different entities. Let's take a closer look at this mode. To create a new project preset, open the Settings window and click Create. In the window that opens, you will see three main fields: Export Settings, Pattern Settings and List of Checks. Name your project first. Create the first pattern. A pattern is an entity that is a component of the checked asset and has its own set of rules. Such an entity can be a root group, render mesh, collision, load group, or something else. You can set the name, icon, color, object type, and quantity for the pattern. You can also set the naming rules for the pattern, which will be described in detail later. Let's customize our first pattern to match the root group of the asset. Let's create patterns for all the entities available in our asset. Once you have configured all the patterns, you need to set the hierarchy. To do this, first add the root element. Note that the range for root has changed to single, since there can only be one root element. Set the hierarchy of the asset. The next step is to set up checks for each of the patterns. To do this, click on the pattern and customize the list of checks as you did in the selection mode example. List of checks is customized for each pattern individually. Now let's save the project and check if it works correctly with the asset in the scene. Select the assets you want to check and add them to the list using the Get Hierarchy or Append button. If the selected assets comply with the rules you set in the project preset, they will be successfully added to the list. Let's try changing our assets. For example, remove the collision and try adding assets into the list again. We got a mistake. This happens because now in the collision pattern, the minimum range is set to 1, but in the added asset, there are 0. If we change it to 0, the asset will be added again. Now let's try to set the naming rules for our assets. Regular expressions are used for this purpose. You can find detailed information about regular expressions in the documentation, but let's take a quick look at how they can be used. Let's create an expression for the root group. The default expression is dot and plus. The dot means that the name can contain any character, and plus means that their number can be 1 or more. Thus, this expression allows an asset to have any name. Let's make it so that the root group must necessarily have the prefix sm at the beginning of the name. To do this, type symbol caret and then sm underscore. This means that the name will have to start with the characters sm and underscore. After that, type dot and plus, as the next part of the name can have any characters. Finish expression with $symbol. It means the end of the expression. Let's change the prefix and try to add the asset to the list. It won't add. But with the sm prefix, everything works correctly. Let's add more requirements to the name of the asset. For example, we want to make sure that there is always a letter increment at the end of the name. To do this, let's open the square brackets and specify the letter range there. After the square brackets, let's open curly braces. In them we will specify the exact quantity. Let's see how it works. Very often, different entities must have matching parts of their names. You can use templates for this. In expressions you can define and call templates. To define a template, enter the less than symbol, the name of the template, and then a colon. Anything found after the colon until the end of the template will be added to the template. To limit the template, enter greater than. To call a template, enter its name enclosed in less than and greater than symbols. Let's add the rest of the expression and check how it works. Let's also add a template with a load number to check if they match within a load group. It is important to remember that the declaration of a template must take place in a pattern that is higher in the hierarchy than the one in which it is called. You can also add different variations of valid parts of a name in parentheses and the vertical bar symbol. If pattern always has the same name, you can just enter it as it is. Now that everything is set up, let's validate all the assets, fix the errors, and export them each to a separate FBX. To manually select a directory for export, select Choose in the drop-down list next to Directory and click the Export button. You can read more details about Squid Validator in the documentation. If you still have questions, please contact us. Thank you for watching.